Welcome to the Sports Passion Podcast.
Oh, blocked by James! LeBron James with the rejection.
And here's your host, Lars Marendorf.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Passion Podcast. The second round of the NHL Playoffs is still in full swing, and the first teams have been eliminated. We're going to talk about one of them today. We're going to talk about the Winnipeg Jets in the first part of the podcast, and in the second part, we're going to talk Vegas Golden Knights versus the Colorado Avalanche with Jason Pothier from @SinBinVegas, a great Twitter account, a great homepage where you can get a lot of Vegas Golden Knights content, so highly recommend to follow Jason and to follow @SinBinVegas. But before we're talking about the two best teams in the NHL digging it out, we're going to talk about the two worst teams left in the playoffs and that team that lost that series, and that's going to be the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets were a team that had an up and down season. They were close to the top of the North Division during the season, and they were looking better than I expected them to be, and a lot of experts expected them to be. But in the end, they turned out to be a sort of bubble team there. They finished third in the division, and they got the matchup against the Edmonton Oilers there. And I got to be honest, I picked the Oilers to win that. I thought that the Winnipeg Jets are not as bad as people made them look like in a lot of previews there, but they wouldn't have a chance in a 7-game series against Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, and Mike Smith was playing great there as well. So I thought that, okay, the Jets reached the playoffs, and that's going to be it for them. I was wrong there. They played great against Edmonton. They got the sweep there, and then they saw the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs battle it out, and the Maple Leafs, they won in Game 7, and they were then the favorite for the second round. The Jets were the favorite, and they had home ice for whatever that's worth right now, with not too many people there, not too many fans in Canada, but still they got home ice. They got the last change there in the first two games, and it was one of those games. I mean, we're going to talk about the Avs Golden Knights series. The Avs had a sweep as well, and the Golden Knights played 7 games, and the Avs won Game 1 7-1. In this case, it was the other way around. It looked like the Jets were rusty in Game 1, and they came out a little flat there. Montreal scored 5 goals on Connor Hellebuck, and they won 5-3. And, I talked about the check of Scheifele at the end in one of the German shows, one of the last German shows, so I'm not going to go into detail there. But it was a bad game. I think bad beginning there from the Winnipeg Jets, and the loss hurt, but the suspension of Mark Scheifele hurt them way more than the loss, I think. And they also lost Dylan DeMello at the beginning of that game, and so they were down 2 players after just one game, trailing 1-0. And from that on, from that part on, they scored in the next 3 games. They scored a total of 3 goals. And you're not going to win a lot of hockey games when you're just scoring 1 goal on average. And the second game, they almost did that, but they didn't score any in the second one. And Connor Hellebuck was great, but Carey Price was even better. And so they lost that one 1-0. And they never really came back into the series, although the fourth one went into overtime. But they are only the third team in NHL playoff history that had a sweep and then got swept. So kind of in dubious honor there. But I want to talk a little bit about what's up for them now in the offseason. And they have a couple of question marks there. And there was one question on Twitter where I'm going to get to it now. Hockey Tamo asked pretty much about what are the chances that Paul Maurice will remain as Jets head coach. And I don't have a number, but to me, I'm not really sure if he should return. But I think it's more likely that he will return to the Winnipeg Jets because I don't think they were unpleased with the results in the end. I mean, I mentioned when you said at the beginning that they will finish third, they will reach the playoffs, they will win their first matchup there, they will be able to get to the second round of the playoffs. I think that that's a pretty acceptable result for the Jets management there. And so I don't think that the coach will be questioned a lot. I think he should be. I think that there were a couple of things that they didn't do as good as maybe they could have. I think that he has to implement the younger players a little bit more. I mean, they have pretty much, since Dustin Byfuglien decided not to play anymore, they have a problem on defense. They don't have really number one defenseman there, so they have to solve that problem. And that's pretty much their biggest issue. They got a lot, or they got some other issues to solve as well. Paul Stastny is an unrestricted free agent. Matthew Perreault is an unrestricted free agent. So those two are open. Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis. I mean, only Paul Stastny would be a guy where I would say, okay, they gotta bring him back somehow, but he's injured a lot, or has been injured sometimes. So I think that's also something where you have to look in the kind of money and the kind of term he wants. So that is at least something they have to address in the summer. Perreault, yeah, maybe bring him back, but Thompson and Trevor Lewis, I think you could use your own younger players on those positions there as well. And like I said, on defense, Jody Benn is a UFA. Derek Forbort is a UFA, so they can also change a little bit on defense there, but they don't have a lot of money. I mean, if Stastny and Perreault are not signed, they have about $10 million from those two guys, but you got to fill a couple of holes there in the lineup. So I don't know what you get for that money that is really better than what you already had there in place this season. And I mean, Blake Wheeler, he's 34, 3 years left on that contract, and there are other guys like Connor Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers there as well. I mean, they have a kind of good mixture up front with veterans like Wheeler and with stars in their prime like Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor, but they are missing something. And one thing that they did, they traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that didn't work out great because Dubois was quarantined, then he was injured. It always felt like he was not at 100%, either from his health status or from getting to know how Paul Maurice wants him to play. So maybe if he gets a full training camp, maybe he gets used to the systems there, he could be their key addition, so to speak, for next year. He's got 1 year left on that contract at $5 million, so it's also going to be a sort of contract year for him, although he will be an RFA. And I mean, he's still 22. That's the same thing with Patrick Laine on the other side of that trade. Those are still young guys. You tend to say that, okay, they are busts, but like I mentioned, 22 is pretty young. He's going to enter his prime now, and maybe if he plays himself into shape, like I said, getting used to what the Winnipeg Jets play like, that could help. That could be their key addition in the offseason. And like I said, you need to have a little younger players. You need to have more depth on defense. I don't know if they can use some of that money there, but yeah, that's about it. I mean, they are set in goal with Connor Hellebuck. You could say, okay, Carey Price outplayed him, but Price at least got some help from his forwards there, got some goal scoring, and Hellebuck didn't get a lot there. He bailed them out in the first round. He was not able to do that in the second round. Okay, but again, he had a Vezina Trophy season the year before. This year he was okay. He had some up and downs as well in the regular season, but still he looks like he is still their future for the next 4 years of his contract. So they are setting goal. They need some defense. They need to get a little younger, a little faster in the forward department there, and then they could be a little bit more, I guess, of a bubble team if they play their cards right, so to speak, regarding the additional players there. And again, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois could be a key addition if he is going to play the way he can play, the way he played last year for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And that's going to be key to the Winnipeg Jets, not only off-season, but obviously to their next season. And after that, I think you give this core at least one more year, and then you're going to see, okay, do we have to cut some of those guys? Do we have to trade some of those guys? Are we going into full rebuild? Or where do we need to add some additional pieces? And also one thing you got to mention for pretty much almost all of the teams, the flat salary cap hurts the teams. It hurts them because a team like Winnipeg could have been able, if the cap increases there, they could have been able to add a player here or there, and that would have helped them. So now they have to work with the flat cap, and we're going to see how they do it. Like I said, I can see a somewhat optimistic outlook there for the Jets. As I said, they're going to be a team that is around the playoff positions there, and maybe can even get higher. But one thing you also got to keep in mind is they will not be playing in the North Division anymore. They will be going back to their original division with Colorado in there, with Minnesota in there. You're going to have the Blues in there. The Stars are back in there, Nashville. So, again, they can possibly be a playoff team. They can get up as high as number 3, I guess, in that division, and that's going to be it for them. But maybe they screw us and they make a big trade for number 1 defenseman, and they trade someone away from their forwards. I don't know that. Right now, I don't see that. So, a little bit of thoughts about the Winnipeg Jets and their upcoming summer and season. Okay, that was the first part of this podcast, and in the second part, as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking to Jason Pothier from @Sinbin Vegas. So I'll be back after the break. So this is part 2 of our show today, and we got the series everyone was anticipating pretty much throughout the year, and we got the Vegas Golden Knights playing the Colorado Avalanche. And the last time I talked about this series, it was 2-0, and things have changed a lot since then. And I want to talk about how things have changed, and there's none better than someone from a station or a Twitter handle, a homepage that is linked to the Vegas Golden Knights. A lot of great content there from Sinbin Vegas, Jason Pothier. Jason, thanks for coming onto the show once again.
Absolutely, Lars. It's a pleasure speaking hockey with you guys.
Yeah, and Jason, I mentioned when I last talked it was 2-0, but before we go into the details, what I saw was that the crowds were coming back in the US, and I think Vegas was one of the first cities and one of the first arenas that was allowed to have full capacity. So that is great for the fans there. I know how crazy that fan base is there. But what is it like now for you guys to work? I've talked throughout the season with different journalists, and it was most of them, or a lot of them, worked at home first. Then there were a couple of them going back to the arenas, I know that most, I think, or all of the press conference are via Zoom. So, what is your daily work looking right now? Is it pretty much back to normal regarding the press box and stuff?
Not necessarily, because, like you said, every day we wake up and we are expecting several press conferences on Zoom, and we do that. We hear from Coach Pete DeBoer always, and certain players, on a rotation. So in a way, that we're used to that. But as you know, I mean, you really gain most um, when you gain access to room and able to talk to a player after practice or after a game, you're able to get much more really in-depth conversations with the player, and also you're able to get exclusive comments. That's something that others wouldn't hear.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing, is where it's not really individual work anymore. We're all sharing everybody else. Every outlet is sharing the same information. Now, when it comes to the press box, first it was, maybe about 10%, 20% open. So my partner Ken Bolke and I would switch off and go to certain games that we both wanted to go to. So neither one of us could go at the same time. And now they opened it up a little bit more in the playoffs, but the same situation is going on where several outfits have had their, they've been limited, and which is fine, because after a year of watching hockey on TV and through Zoom, you sort of get used to it. It's not ideal, and I really look forward to next year when things open up completely. But as of right now, you adjust with it, and I think the players have, adjusted, and they really do. They give us what they can, in these Zoom conferences. But even it's a little bit more difficult for them, because they like the one-on-ones as well. And instead of doing one on, 20 on Zoom. So, it's been challenging, but overall it's hockey. So, I can't complain. Covering hockey is not really a job. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure is. And um, it was not so much fun in the first game for the Vegas Golden Knights, but after they got beat 7-1, not nothing, I just had the feeling, okay, it's a bad game. They came off a 7-game series, and they're gonna be ready for game two. And the first period of game two looked a lot like game one, and I think they were kind of lucky to just be down 2-1 there. And I thought, okay, if they're gonna play that way, this is gonna end pretty soon. And from that period on, from that break on, they were dominating the Avalanche. They lost game one. They lost game two, and they trailed in game three as well. But they were so much better in doing all the little things, all the coverage there. What have you seen and what have you heard from them? What did they do to change their way of playing, but also to eliminate what Colorado is doing pretty good if you let them do it?
Well, there's several reasons why they're ahead in the series now, 3-2. Number one is the Golden Knights. Since Pete DeBoer has become their coach, and that dates back to February of last season, it's been, they've been committed to blocking pucks, blocking shots. And the first two games, and actually it goes even back to the Minnesota series, there's a little bit of a trend. When the Golden Knights block 18 or more shots, they win. They're undefeated. And as opposed to the other side, when they don't block 18 shots and shoot less than and block less than that, they lose. And there's a big reason for that, is because some of the top shooters in the league, they have been able to shut down. And Nathan MacKinnon, we all know, is that we expect him to be there night in and night out, and he's been quiet since game one. And one of the reasons is that the Golden Knights are blocking everything. And not only that, they're just giving him as little room and as little time and space as possible. So he's frustrated. I mean, we have arguably one of the best top 3, maybe top 5 players in the league, just completely frustrated on the ice. And I think what's happening is maybe he's forcing it too much, and that leads to turnovers. It leads to bad passes. It leads to, just bad dumps. Sometimes turns into icing. And I think that when guys like McKinnon, Landeskog, and even Rantanen, when they're frustrated, things don't look good for them. And I think they're pressing so much that right now they don't know how to get out of it. But on the other side, the Golden Knights are just doing a really, really good job. They're playing disciplined hockey. They're just locking down when they can. They're moving the puck immediately. They're not giving they're not getting the Avalanche extended time in their own zone. And when they are, they're getting just outstanding goaltending. So last night there were or today you watched it. It was different because there were times where you got worried. The Golden Knights were pinned in their own zone for a minute and a half, but Fleury really came up big, and they were able to out some of those attacks. So Vegas whole round has not changed their game. They stuck with their game, but really what it's been is they've been so much more effective defensively and by blocking shots. It's completely frustrated the Avalanche.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that Game 5 was a little different. To me, the series is, I said when we started talking strange times, the series is kind of strange as well. The first game was dominant by the Avs. They win that. Game 4, dominant by Vegas. They win that. Game 2, Vegas was dominant. They lost it. Game 3, they were dominant. They were pretty much, they were about 5 minutes away from being down 3-0 there. And in this game, Game 5, the Avs were at least better. They were not as dominant, I think, as they were in the first game, obviously, but they were better. And then they played in Game 3 and 4. And you mentioned that Fleury bailed them out. When I rewatched that and when I saw the first goal coming in with 2 seconds left there, I thought that was a pretty bad play by Fleury. It looked to me like he wanted to at least a little bit show up. Saw it there with a couple seconds to go, make a nice glove catch there, show it to the crowd, whatever. And he mishandled that. It ends up in the net. And I would say Fleury once in a time in Pittsburgh, he would have been broken by that. He's now much more relaxed to me. And what do you see from him, and what do you hear from his teammates regarding him? Because I was surprised how great he played after that, because that could be a neck breaker, something like that, going into the break with such a goal there.
Yeah, coaches always say, the end of period goals are game killers. These are the ones that you don't expect to go in. You're trying to do everything possible just to kill clock. And like you said, Fleury might have, tried to hot dog that one a little bit. And, again, those situations usually, especially in the playoffs, that dooms you. It sends you into a little bit of a spiral. And last night, I got to admit, I thought that was the dagger. I thought that was the one that would end the game for the Golden Knights because, realistically, that's a goal that Avalanche shouldn't have been rewarded, but they were. 0.8 seconds left on the board, and Brandon Saad does a good job of recognizing the time and then releasing the puck, and it goes in. It's a fluke goal. We all know that, but like you said, that was it was unexpected, and especially going against Fleury. But the difference, I think, from Fleury now and Fleury in Pittsburgh is he's now the true leader of this team. And I think that, Mark Stone wears the captain. He is the captain. He wears the C, and he's a fantastic leader. I think last night's goal sort of proved that, he not only can lead in the locker room and on the ice, but he can get things done when it really matters. Fleury is just one of those guys that he doesn't need to say much. The team sees him, watches him, and they say, wow, this guy is giving it all for us. We have to do the same. So I think he plays this just intense style of hockey that almost amazes his own teammates to the point where they realize they have to step up their game to equal his. So I think what happened last night is he probably was embarrassed. He was probably frustrated and disappointed that he let his team down. And from there on out, he was their best player.
And you talked about for Mark Stone as a captain. Obviously, he scored a great goal there in overtime. But one part I think of the Golden Knights that gets unnoticed or maybe flies under the radar a little bit is the defensive core to me, because when I compare it to Colorado, everyone is speaking about Cale Makar. He got nominated today for the Norris Trophy there. They have Girard in there. They've got Toes. So when you look at the ice time, they have got four top defensemen there. But for Vegas, it is more balanced. Of course, you got a guy like Pietrangelo, who's a veteran, who's won a cup before, but they are a way more balanced unit to me. What is the key for Vegas, and the key to that unit that makes them such a great fit for them? And also, to me, they are a little bit interchangeable in a way that I don't really notice who's out there of those, because they are pretty reliable altogether. So, what is the key for that unit?
Yeah, it's a good observation because, sometimes you don't know who's out there because they are consistent. And I think it also goes back to the organizational depth that they have at defense because, Pete DeBoer has been able to change out players. Nick Hague has been in, then he's been out. Nick Holden's been in, and he's been out. And these are players that have had impact. Nick Holden has added points to this series. And when you're looking at guys like that who realistically, are 16 to 18-minute players and maybe even see less at times during the playoffs. But realistically, they've been so consistent that there's no reason why Pete DeBoer hasn't felt comfortable rolling them out their average minutes or a little bit more than that. You mentioned Pietrangelo. He's turned into this player where all season long, fans and even teammates were waiting. They were waiting for Alex Pietrangelo and that $8.8 million contract to show up. He wasn't doing anything offensively. He was getting burned defensively. He looked slow, but it seems like his experience, his veteran leadership, and his experience just all around in the postseason has really shown up, and he's able to eat those long minutes, able to track down the puck and not get beat. He's definitely a little bit slower than most of the Avalanche players. You see that. We all see it. But he's able to cut him off and build his own defensive wall that he's able to create basically outside shots. I mean, Vegas is creating outside shots with their defense. And we know that, Fleury's going to be able to stop most of those. Sure, yesterday was a fluke on the outside, but for the most part, if you're pushing, McKinnon, Landeskog, Renton into the walls and they have to shoot from odd angles, they're not going in. So overall, I think the defense has been really strong. A guy like Shea Theodore, who led the team in last postseason, he's not scoring or adding points at all, but I still think his presence, his puck movement, his vision, all that, being able to really, add impact, even though he's not showing up on the score sheet. I think no matter what, when he's on the ice, he's adding something.
Looking forward to Game 6, there were a couple of lineup changes for Game 5 for the Golden Knights as well. I mean, Colorado changed. They had Newhook back in there. Logan O'Connor was healthy again. Vegas changed. Janmark was back in after being out injured. Ryan Reeves didn't play. Do you see any lineup changes there? Especially because Peter Boris got the last change at home, so maybe that's something where he looks to shuffle at least the third or fourth line there a little bit.
Well, it's a good point because usually you roll the same lineup that you did when you won the last game. But like you just mentioned, that in Game 4, it was a different lineup. There were some alterations there. But one reason why DeBoer changed things up was he felt like he needed some fresh bodies. He felt like some of the back-end guys were getting worn down a little bit. Possibly Reeves, who was coming off an injury. Maybe he was working, he felt like he was getting a little bit too much work. But also there could be, an area of concern that, they don't need that physical presence as much as they did early in the series. Now it's all about the best players on the ice beating the best players on the ice. And not that Ryan Reeves isn't, a quality role player, but you don't necessarily need that thunder. Right now you need speed, quickness, and execution. And I think that DeBoer is suggesting when he when he sits a guy like Reeves that he wants to use a little bit more of those top end guys. He wants to use the Marcia Show, Carlson, and Smith line a little bit more than he would in the early part of the series. So we'll see what happens tomorrow, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the same lineup. And Janmark being back in the line really did show, it really helped that third line. And obviously we saw Alex Tuck with a big goal, and that coming off of Janmark's pass.
Yeah, sure. Jason, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I listened to your playoff previews. I listened to one of Kent's shows after the 7-1, and I think what's great to me, you guys are linked to the Golden Knights and you cover the Golden Knights, but I think what I like about you guys is that you're honest about your opinions and you're try to be neutral towards what you see on the ice, because I think that you always point out to what the other team did good. You give credit to other teams as well, and I think I like that. It's not homerism there. There's just a great opinion about hockey, and I always recommend your podcast and follow you guys on Twitter there. So thanks a lot for coming on the show, and I hope for Game 7. I'm going to say that. I hope for Game 7. I hope for you guys that you get as much hockey as possible. I mean, if Boston wins, I think you were from the Boston area, so if Boston can come back against the Islanders and maybe even win a series, you would have a Boston Vegas series. I think that would be a great thing for you. But anyway, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Absolutely. And yeah, it'd be fun if it was Bruins Golden Knights. I'm sure I'd be jumping on a couple of planes back and forth. But either way, like you said, as much as, I would love to see the Golden Knights advance tomorrow, and I want to see them advance altogether. But, who could pass up a Game 7? And I'm sort of hoping for a Game 7 as well, and looking forward to that. But, hey, listen, hockey's back, and it's deep in the playoffs now, and it's all excitement from here.
Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.